Hey guys, welcome back. So this is 11.3. The title of this little mini unit is called "The Separation Begins." So these are events that are not necessarily. No one can argue that these are the start of the Cold War per se, but they are like accelerants to the fire. All right. Some historians think that the Cold War has started. Other historians think that the Cold War is about to start. So these events are kind of this in between period, but they are evidence of a deteriorating relationship of the once grand alliance. So no matter what view you have of when the Cold War started, this is signs that it's not going well between those former allies. So let's get into it. All right. Okay. Here we go. So Dean Acheson. Dean Acheson is a character that you should know. He's Secretary of State under Harry S. Truman. He's going to be someone that helps develop the Marshall Plan. He's going to help develop NATO. All right, in terms of politicians that are not like presidents, right? In terms of just politicians, he's up there in American history. All right, we're going to talk about him several times throughout this Cold War course, especially when we get to the HL extensions. All right, he's going to be a big reason as to why America gets involved or not so involved in China and then ultimately Korea as well. And he's going to be one of the people in Truman's ear convincing him to kind of prescribe to the Riga axioms and to be a little bit more confrontational with the Soviets than FDR had been. And here we have George Kennan. All right, I introduced him in 11.2 Part 2. He is going to be the guy that was in Riga as a part of the Division for Russian Affairs. He is going to be one of the leaders in this school that the Soviets are dangerous. There's some untold things going on in the Soviet Union. All right. So after the Riga axioms come out, George Kennan is going to write something that's known as the Long Telegram. All right. This is a telegram that is ultimately going to talk about in detail his outlook on the Soviet Union and give advice to the United States about how to deal with the Soviet Union. So this is taking the Riga axioms one step further. All right. This is after the failure of something called the Baruch Plan. That's something that I didn't put on this PowerPoint. It actually used to be here. I deleted it. But the Baruch Plan caused more tension and showed that one of the main sources of tension between the Soviet Union and the United States was going to be about nuclear technology. All right. The Baruch Plan tried to put nuclear technology in international hands by giving the technology to the United Nations, but the Soviet Unions weren't very fond of that because they figured that the United Nations would kind of block them from developing their own technology, and it was like a nuclear monopoly, right? So we don't really need to talk about that, but that's what that was. So the Long Telegram. I like to describe the Long Telegram as two different words. All right, George Kennan is outlined in the Soviet Union as dangerous and expansionist. All right, those are two words that I like to associate with the Long Telegram. He doesn't say that explicitly, but he says that quite implicitly within the 8,000-word message that is supposed to be, as it says here, the new approach to U.S.-Soviet relations. Here it is, the Long Telegram. Now, off the back of this, we've got the Fulton speech, also known as the Iron Curtain speech. So it's given the name Fulton speech because it is given in Fulton, Missouri, one of the most important things to ever happen in the state of Missouri. But this is where Churchill is going to state for the first time that an Iron Curtain has dawned upon Europe, right? That there are two worlds now. There is the Western world and there is the Eastern world, and there is pretty much a wall separating those two worlds. Please don't think this is a physical barrier. It is not. It is an ideological wall, right? Where we have Western ideas and values, and we have Eastern ideas and values, and it's very hard for those two places to communicate because of that ideological wall. All right, this is going to be a huge rift between the Soviet Union and the West, right? Not necessarily only America, but Britain as well. This is a pivot from what's happened at Yalta and Potsdam, right? This is the symbolic breakdown of the Grand Alliance. They're no longer allies. They no longer see eye to eye. In fact, there is a wall built up between the two. Right? So that is the Iron Curtain speech. Here's actually a little quote from it. A lot of cartoons about the Iron Curtain speech in class. We're going to talk about these a little bit. We'll talk about these too in class. This is one of my favorite ones. All right, so cause effect. The beginning of the Cold War is very cause effect. So as a result of the Iron Curtain idea and the Iron Curtain speech, Stalin is going to reassemble Common Form. Right, Common Form had been an organization for a while, but he's going to kind of bring it back, and he's going to give it some teeth. Right, so Common Form is Stalin's way of holding on to Eastern Europe as tightly as he can. All right, Common Form was an organization in which the leaders of all the communist parties would get together, and essentially, if Stalin didn't like what you had to say or ideas that you had, he would remove you and replace you with someone that is more Stalinist. Right, so the West is theoretically getting closer together with that idea of the Iron Curtain speech and proclaiming that we are different from Eastern Europe. And now Stalin is coming in and he's tightening his fist in Eastern Europe. Okay. If you notice here, all right, I hope my head's not in the way here. Whoop, I'm up here now. The purple one, all right. Yugoslavia is not red in this. So Yugoslavia is going to be a very interesting case. We're going to talk about Yugoslavia a little bit more, especially when we get to Unit 13, the Global Cold War. Yugoslavia is in both camps. All right. Tito is going to be the name of the leader of Yugoslavia. He's the leader of the Yugoslav Communist Party. He knows how to play Stalin and the United States off of each other, and he is going to use that to put Yugoslavia in a very, very favorable position with both of those sides, right? When Stalin does something that bothers him, he threatens to kind of get closer to the United States. When the United States does something that bothers him, he threatens to get closer to Stalin. So he's walking the tightrope between both of those camps. So the Iron Curtain, he is politically part of the Iron Curtain, but not so much because he teeters between the two. We'll talk more about him later, I promise. The West. So the West is very, 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 one more time, very afraid of the idea of communism spreading throughout Western Europe, right? We're talking about war-torn Europe. We've talked about this many times in class, but communism is a government of the poor, right? Poor people in poor countries feel more drawn towards that communist idea because of that figurative equality that it promises. So after the war is over, we've got places that are beat up, right? They're torn apart because of the war. So two places that are highlighted by the West are Greece and Turkey. All right, Greece because of its geographic position on the Mediterranean, and Turkey, same reason, and its geographic position closer to the Middle East and all of the ports and waterways that both of those countries sit on. They're very afraid that if those countries particularly fall towards communism, it could have terrible effects on the strength of the West. So they're really going to focus their attention on both of those countries. Essentially, in Greece, there were British troops there still from World War II. They have an election. That election goes in the way of the West, but then there's a revolution in Greece, and the communists are trying to take over the country. And the British are going to realize that they don't have the money or the forces to stop this rebellion going on, and so they're going to look towards the United States. And they're very afraid that a civil war might happen, and if that is the case, the communists have a chance to win. So a lot of eyes are looking at Greece in 1946, 47, that time period. All right. Similar thing in Turkey. Very, very, very similar situation. Not with so much of a rebellion, but we're afraid that communism is trickling into the government there. Right. So essentially, what's going to happen is Truman is going to approach Congress, and he is going to get them to sign this thing right here. All right. Where's my pointer? Right here. The Greece and Turkey Aid Bill of 1947, which is going to send $400 million US to Greece and Turkey as relief to try and rebuild out of World War II. Think about that. This is 1947, right? America has never to this point asserted itself as, what I say throughout the year, the world police, right? This is the first time America does something like this, not in wartime, right? We have never handed out money like that overseas to try and push our own agenda, okay? So when I use the word dollar imperialism in class the other day, and when I use it for the rest of this unit, this is what I'm talking about. America is colonizing other countries, not with troops, but with their dollars. And they're going to try and make countries dependent on the U.S. dollar. And it was a genius political move by the United States that is really going to set the Cold War on a certain course. All right? So that's the first kind of thing in a series of a few things that really asserts America as that dominant power globally, not just in the Western Hemisphere. So that's the Greece and Turkey aid bill of 1947. All right? I'll pick up back up with 11.4 and see where that aid bill, what that turns into. And it's a much bigger deal very soon. Be good.